What is up, and welcome back to Beyond the Arc with Brandon Silvers. As always, I am your host, Brandon Silvers, talking NFL quarterbacks today. Appreciate you being here. You're going to want to subscribe if you haven't already. No time to waste. Let's get into it. All right, part of the reason I moved the episode release day to Sundays is so that I could talk more NFL. The risk when you record before Sunday's games and release after is so much happens that you can be releasing an episode that's dated, but now I am freed from those shackles. Plus, we're now firmly in the third quarter of the season, so my opinions and analysis are even stronger. So what better way for the first NFL Sunday episode drop before NFL Sunday than to participate in a tradition that was here long before podcasts or YouTube or the internet itself? That's right. I'm going to be ranking quarterbacks. First off, let's go over the rules. We're placing these quarterbacks in tiers that I have created myself. Unfortunately for my haters, you cannot argue with my tiers because they are my tiers. Now, the holidays are coming up, so you are welcome to argue about them with your family over Thanksgiving dinner if you'd like to do that. In fact, I'd highly encourage it. And if you do go this route, please let me know who wins. With that being said, you will not see these tiers anywhere else unless someone is a liar and a cheat because, again, they are my tiers. My analysis is a combination of the eye test, stats, impact on winning, and impact on losing. Wins are not a QB stat, but quarterbacks can help win games and lose them, so we have to account for that. And most importantly, my favorite criteria, vibes. Are vibes and the eye test the same? No. The eye test is what I see as far as their play on the field is concerned. Vibes are more along the lines of, do his teammates like him? I can use the eye test to determine that, so it's a subset of the eye test, if anything, but they are a little bit different. So without further ado, it's time for our first tier, the Michael Vick in Madden 2004 tier. The year is 2003. You are in your early teenage years, but your real life football career is already over due to an incident where you fractured your arm on a tackling dummy. You also strongly resemble Murder Inc. CEO Irv Gotti. However, you can still have a wildly successful NFL career thanks to the good folks at EA Sports. Michael Vick's on the cover of the latest version of Madden as he's seemingly on the way to becoming an icon on and off the field in the same way Allen Iverson has done for the NBA. The video game version of Vick highlighted the rocket arm, speed, elusiveness, and improv skills that made his game so appealing, while also waving their special programmer wand to remove the accuracy issues that cropped up for real-life Mike. Flash forward to today, and the quarterback in today's game who reminds me of this virtual version of Vick is none other than Baltimore Ravens QB Lamar Jackson. In a season where a lot of the talk has been our quarterback sorry now, he's still putting up video game numbers. The talk with Lamar has always been about his passing. When you look at his stats over the course of his career, it's hard to explain why, other than this is a stale talking point from people who still have a hard time understanding a black quarterback. If this season in particular hasn't put that to rest, I don't know what will. He leads the league in touchdown percentage, QB rating, however you feel about that, and pretty much any variation of adjusted yards per attempt stat that exists. He does all of this while still remaining one of the scariest players, quarterback or otherwise, with his legs. Does he still miss throws sometimes? Will the Ravens still lose games? They will win, of course. This isn't about finding the perfect quarterback. This isn't a video game where they can wave their wand and make all that stuff disappear. But when you watch him play, nobody else looks like this guy. He makes Ravens games appointment viewing. Speaking of guys who are appointment viewing, as we move on to the next tier, Lamar's having a hell of a season and career, but the quarterback who is having the best career ever is Patrick Mahomes. And as a result, he, like Lamar, gets a tier of his own, the coveted Michael Jordan tier. 3 Super Bowl rings in 6 full seasons as a starter. He also puts up video game numbers. He's invented new ways to throw the ball that defy the laws of physics. He's done it throwing to great players. He's done it throwing to guys they find on the street. He almost seems bored at this point, and kind of like how MJ would invent scenarios and slights to fuel his competitiveness, Mahomes manufactures new ways to make this harder than it is so he can stay locked in. So what does he do? He keeps having family members embarrass him to the point where he has to play well enough to take the attention away from that. Oh wait, that's too easy too? Well, what if he starts throwing the ball to the other team like never before? Well, he's trying that, still winning games though. This ends with him stepping away from football to try playing baseball before returning and winning more Super Bowls thanks to a newfound perspective on success. And while Mahomes is the only one in that tier for good reason, it's not the only basketball related tier we have. No, we also have the Larry Bird tier. This is for the economically anxious looking quarterbacks who are hooping. Starting off with my guy Joe Burrow, he gets bonus points for being cool as well. The NFL quarterback version of 90s R&B singer John B, or in simpler terms, he's what Travis Kelce was trying to be before he went the Post Malone route. Joe was looking like an all-time great. I mean, he had the Bengals, the Cincinnati Bengals, in the Super Bowl with a legitimate chance to win it all. Then he got them back to the AFC Championship game. But he had a rough season last year where he ended up missing the whole last part of the season with an injury. Well, he's back on track and better than ever. He leads the NFL in completions, attempts, yards, and touchdown passes with 27, and he's only thrown 4 picks, not really getting the recognition he deserves because the Bengals aren't winning. If I told you a quarterback had the stats that Joe has, you'd certainly expect them to be better than 4-7. The Bengals dug themselves a hole to start the season, and just when you think they're about to climb out of it, they get hit with an anvil of bad luck, so they might not even make the playoffs. Last thing I saw said that they had like a 9% chance, but don't blame Joe. He's spectacular. Joining him in the Larry Bird tier is a guy whose team is managing to win games, Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills. I'm not going to lie, I did not see the vision his first year or so, and he took a bit of a step back last season, and I thought he'd only get worse after losing Stephon Diggs over the offseason, but I was wrong. I'm a longtime Panthers fan, thoughts and prayers appreciated, and he reminds me a lot of Cam Newton. Did y'all see him truck that Chiefs player to score a touchdown and help give Kansas City their first L of the season? It was insane. He did that man like that tackling dummy did me. He's huge, he can run, he has a cannon for an arm, everything you want from a quarterback who's fun to watch, and he's doing it without a true number one receiver. I think the key for him this season is he's done a good job of limiting the interceptions that have plagued him at times in the past. A big reason for that is that he seems more willing to take what the defense gives him this season. You're not going to hit a home run every at bat. Sometimes a single works just fine. Also, if Joe Burrow is who Travis Kelce was trying to be before, then Josh is who Travis is trying to be now. Rounding out this tier is Justin Herbert. I struggled with where to place him, but you know what? He's hooping. He doesn't have the past playoff success of the other guys, but that's okay. He's Cinderella-esque in that he'll look amazing and then turn into a pumpkin at the worst time possible, but he's in a ball gown most of the time, if that makes any sense. His numbers aren't jumping off the page this season like they normally do because new coach Jim Harbaugh thinks the forward pass is liberal bullshit, but he's thrown 13 touchdowns to just 1 interception, and his leading receiver is Ladd McConkey, so what do you want from him? He's right on the cusp between this tier and another one I'll talk about later, and if he makes me look like a fool for putting him here, I will never forgive him. Okay, moving on to the elite game manager tier. This one is tough because it sounds like shade, but I don't mean it that way. These are guys who are at their best when they're playing within themselves, and the talent around them helps make them look better than they are at times, but you can go really far with these guys. Starting off, probably controversially, if you ignore all of the context I just gave you about what an elite game manager is Eagles quarterback Jalen Hurts. He's got the opposite thing that Burrow has, where if you look at his stats, you might think the Eagles are having a down year, especially if you know who their head coach is. Hell, you might watch the games and feel the same way. But in spite of it all, they're leading the NFC East. Now, Jalen is not a guy who's going to drop back and try to pick apart opposing defenses with his arm. In fact, a lot of times it feels like he looks at A.J. Brown, and if he's not open, then it's a wrap. He's just going to try to see how many yards he can get with his legs. And that's good because he's really good at running the ball. And he's also got Saquon Barkley now, who is also really good at running the ball. So when they're both cooking with their legs, it opens things up through the air, and he can start picking apart defenses then. We saw how effective that can be in 2022 when they damn near won the Super Bowl. Nick Sirianni appears to have lost his mojo as a coach, and rumor has it that he and Hurts hate each other, but the Eagles do have the talent to win a Super Bowl. I don't think they will this year, but they could, and Hurts is a big reason why they could. The prototype for this tier is Alex Smith, and if you go back and look at Smith's numbers before that terrible leg injury, Hurts has a lot in common with him. Hurts is an elite runner, and while Smith was never quite at that level, he was also a guy who could take off on you. Much less mobile, but also in this elite game manager tier is Lions quarterback Jared Goff. He's had an incredibly underrated career. Part of that is he was a number 1 overall pick, who's never really been a top 5 quarterback in the league, and the team that drafted him won the Super Bowl immediately after they got rid of him. Another part of that is when you watch him try to do too much or not quite have enough time to make decisions, it gets ugly quick like it did a couple of weeks ago when he threw 5 interceptions against the Texans. But you can live with one of those games a year when you see him the rest of the time. He seems to really understand the fact that he doesn't have to go out there and be a hero. Go do you, execute the offense, limit your mistakes, and win games. He rarely loses games for them. Even that 5 interception game was a win. I mean, they are 9-1 when I'm recording this. Not bad. The final guy in this tier who could actually learn a lot from Goff is Brock Purdy. It's been hell trying to figure out if this guy is good or not, and I finally settled on yes with an asterisk. If you put him on a team that didn't have all of the weapons the 49ers have, he wouldn't look nearly as good. And we got a glimpse of that this year as he's been asked to do a bit more than usual with the injuries San Francisco has had and their defense not being quite as sharp as it has been in the past. And when you ask Brock to do a little bit too much, his accuracy gets iffy and his decision-making flies out the window. This is a guy who has a college low-light tape of dumbest interceptions ever. Go look it up. It's terrible. When that guy's in the huddle for the 49ers, good luck. But on the flip side, we've seen how effective he can be when he does play within himself. We saw it when he kind of fell into their lap as a rookie, and again last season when he almost won a Super Bowl for him. The margin of error is slim for him, but when he nails it, he makes them nearly impossible to beat. Okay, the next tier is the BoBerry Biscuit tier. This is named for former Panthers quarterback Jake Delhomme, who parlayed his success into an endorsement deal with Bojangles. This is for quarterbacks who are more exciting than good, but can sometimes be good. For those unfamiliar with Jake's game, he was basically a poor man's Brett Favre, which is pretty neat for poor men who get their own version of Favre, while the real Favre allegedly misappropriates government funds meant to help them. Jake never did anything like that, at least not to my knowledge, but he was a gunslinger, and you never knew what was going to happen when he dropped back to pass. Could be a touchdown, could be an interception return for a touchdown, could end up in the stands. The only thing you knew is that it was going to be fun to watch. We're going full-on Spider-Man meme with the first 2 members of this tier. Jameis Winston is a former Heisman Trophy winning quarterback who was drafted first overall by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and now plays for the Cleveland Browns. Baker Mayfield is a former Heisman Trophy winning quarterback who was drafted first overall by the Cleveland Browns, who now plays for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They both love to throw the ball down the field. They don't care as much about which team catches it. They simply believe the ball belongs in the air, and they exist for the sole purpose of making that happen. This level of not giving a fuck can lead to some beautiful moments, such as when Jameis beat the Ravens in his first start this season, or the Steelers this week, or Baker throwing 4 touchdowns and 3 interceptions in a blowout win against the Saints. But generally, it's terrifying for fans of their teams. And if these two had a child who had the size and running ability of a toddler, it would be the 3rd quarterback in this tier, Kyler Murray. He also won the Heisman, even doing so at Oklahoma the year after Baker did it there. And he was also a number 1 overall pick. His play has put the Cardinals in a tough spot. He's good enough at what he does that he'll be hard to replace, but he's not good enough to where the team is actually competitive. His don't give a fuck attitude is expressed outwardly, not just in his throws, which adds another interesting wrinkle to things. He might be too busy playing video games to look Marvin Harrison Jr.'s way today. Tough shit. Maybe he'll take off running instead. What are you going to do about it? But again, this is fun to watch, particularly when they're not on your team. Okay, now it's time for the if you know, let me know tier for guys who I just can't figure out. This is where Justin Herbert almost ended up before I decided he was indeed hooping this year. Starting off with Jordan Love, who is very close to being in the BoBerry Biscuit tier. Now, he did get hurt in the first game and he missed a couple of weeks, so we have to give him some grace there. But he looked well on his way last season, and we haven't really seen that guy this year. Did he just surprise people last year, and now that they have film to scout him, he's not actually good? I don't know, which is why he's here. Similar story for CJ Stroud. Incredible rookie season. Even talk of him in the MVP conversation. Then, this offseason, they bring in Stephon Diggs. But even before Diggs got hurt and his other weapons like Nico Collins missed time, he didn't look like the same player at all. Which is wild because his numbers are generally the same outside of more interceptions this season. Is he just unlucky? Was he extra lucky last year? When I watch them, what stands out to me is his accuracy on big third downs seems to be inconsistent, but I have no proof of this to back me up. It's still early in his career, like Love, so he's probably going to be fine, but I don't know this year, so here he is. I'm also going to put Commanders rookie Jaden Daniels here. His rookie season has been a combination of Stroud's 2 years where he's looked awesome, then confused me. I think a big reason for this is the Commanders changed their play calling when he got hurt to protect him. They stopped letting him run as much. He ran the ball a little over 10 times a game before getting injured against the Panthers. Since then, it's been about 6 a game. The threat of him running opened up his passing game, so without that, he's been less effective through the air, and if he's still hurt, that could also be affecting his throws. I think he's going to end up being good, but I just can't tell you for sure right now, so here he is. Let's talk about some guys who aren't nearly as good as they look in our Fool's Gold tier. Dak Prescott would be here if he hadn't gotten hurt. Say hello to Kirk Cousins. This cultural experiment the league is doing by dropping him off in Atlanta is great, and his numbers look decent, especially for a guy coming off an Achilles tear, but we know who you are, Kirk Cousins. He's similar to Kyler Murray in that he's good enough that you can't really replace him, at least not easily, but he's not going to take your team anywhere significant, so the Falcons will keep drafting quarterbacks until the end of time, but at least we get to see him swag and surf. Now, I know what you're thinking. Thank God the Vikings got away from him finally, so they can see what a quarterback who is actually good looks like. Wrong. Sam Darnold joins Kirk in this tier, unfortunately for Vikings fans. The good news is this is an upgrade for Sam. He's not been particularly good in the NFL, but he's had some monster games this year, and he's well on his way to having a career season. Sadly, none of it is real. We all know how it ends. There's only so much Justin Jefferson can do to cover up that stink. Eventually, Sam will do what Sam always does. We've seen flashes, so you know it's on the way. It's like the subtle foreshadowing trend on TikTok. He's building to something bad. Tua Tagovailoa would also be in this tier, but he gets his own tier, the Austin Collie Stop Doing This tier. Austin Collie was a receiver for the Colts in the early 2010s who looked promising, but he kept getting concussed to the point where I was afraid to watch Colts games. That's where we're at with Tua, who makes no effort to protect himself, no special helmet, doesn't slide, nothing. In fact, he goes the opposite direction with it. If he could take his brain out of his skull and use it as an extra blocker, he'd do it. It is madness. The fact that he's not nearly as good as his numbers would lead you to believe is secondary to all of this. I can't even talk about it anymore. Okay, the wait and see tier goes to a couple of rookie quarterbacks, Caleb Williams and Bo Nix. Williams just hasn't been good this year except against the Jags, who should be in the ACC, but this is how rookies are supposed to look, and the Bears have done him zero favors in terms of coaching and weapons, so it's hard to judge at this point. I didn't think Bo Nix had a prayer of starting this season, and if he did, I couldn't imagine him not ending up in a tier that was for terrible quarterbacks, but here he is. Not nearly the Drew Lock 2.0 I thought we were getting with him. He's gotten better as the season has gone on, too. The past 2 months, he's averaged 230 yards a game and has thrown 13 touchdowns to just 2 interceptions. And while Caleb has no help, it's not exactly like Bo is doing this with the greatest show on turf, Rams himself. And to think all it took for him to finally be good at being a quarterback is a decade of college football. Rounding out this tier is Drake May of the Patriots. I almost made a judgment on him, but I'm trying to be fair, and he was really good in college. He hasn't started the whole year, but has played somewhere between Caleb and Bo when he has started. However, the Patriots don't deserve a good quarterback for another generation at least. Next up, we have the raw deal tier. These are guys early in their careers who we've seen enough of to make an educated guess of this shit just isn't going to happen for them, and their organizations are to blame. Consider yourself on notice, Caleb Williams. This first one hurts me to do, but as a Panthers fan, it is necessary and accurate. Bryce Young, I'm pulling for you, but damn. And again, this is on David Tepper. Bryce didn't make them trade away all those assets to draft Jack from Blackish, then expect him to play behind an offensive line that offered little to no resistance to anybody who wanted to come through and try to separate his head from the rest of his body. Credit to Bryce. He keeps showing up and being professional. I'm hopeful he can put it together like a Baker Mayfield or Jameis and end up having a respectable career. I highly doubt it happens on the Panthers, though. The Panthers came into the NFL the same year as the Jags, whose quarterback Trevor Lawrence makes this list as well. I know that feels harsh because Trevor has had more success than Bryce, certainly, but he was supposed to be a generational quarterback. What'd Jacksonville do? Well, they gave him Urban Meyer and now Doug Peterson as his head coaches. It's gotten so bad that they send them to London half the time to hide how bad they really are from America. He still has all the tools to be good, but you wonder what starting his career like this has done to his mind and confidence. You know it's bad when me, a Gamecock fan, is starting to feel bad for him. And now he's hurt too, which might be for the best because you hate to see him going out there every week laying it on the line for this team. Hopefully he can escape as soon as possible. Also, it looks like Mac Jones will be taking over for him while he's hurt. Mac, definitely on this list. We've seen enough, not it. This is an AFC South heavy tier. Will Levis, my guy, it's not your fault. Look at the Titans quarterbacks since Steve McNair left. Still just year 2 for Will, but my big issue is his good plays look like he didn't mean to do them, and his bad plays look on purpose. I don't know how else to explain it other than that. A former Titans quarterback who would also be here in this tier is Malik Willis. He's even more proof that the Titans are just grasping at straws when it comes to this position. They drafted Malik in the 3rd round the year before they drafted Will in the 2nd. There's being smart and not holding on to your mistakes too long, and then there's whatever the Titans are doing. Malik filled in for Jordan Love when he got hurt earlier this year in Green Bay, and he won some games, so that was nice to see, but he's still got a lot of work to do before he's a full-time starter. Anthony Richardson of the Indianapolis Colts, it's not your fault. They got caught up in what they saw. You look at him, you see Cam Newton 2.0, 6'4", 250, can throw the ball a mile and a half. Unfortunately, he maxed out on physical attributes and arm strength and didn't save enough for accuracy. I guess the thought process was Shane Steichen is the coach. He's got a bit of a reputation as a quarterback whisperer, so whatever wasn't clicking for Richardson at Florida when he was in college could get cleaned up. The problem is the guys that Steichen was cleaning up in the pros, Justin Herbert and Jalen Hurts, were completing 64, 65% of their passes in college. Richardson never hit the 60% mark. In the only full season he started, he was just under 54%. People talked about Cam's accuracy issues, but he was at 66% that year at Auburn. To draft a guy with such a glaring issue 4th overall, then expect him to do something against the best competition in the world is insane. He's a project. Now, he can have some success with his legs, but is it enough? Probably not. He reminds me of another guy who would also be on this list if he wasn't a backup, Justin Fields. And Fields is infinitely more accurate than Richardson, but he's a guy who's most successful when he's allowed to run, but still not good enough even with that to be a full-time starter. But again, I haven't written all these guys off completely yet, so there's still some hope. Look no further than my next tier, the, well, someone has to start tier. As we've seen throughout this episode, there are only a handful of good quarterbacks, but there are a lot of teams, and someone has to start. Geno Smith is at the top of this tier. He is serviceable, quite serviceable. In fact, they tried to convince us he was really bad with the Jets, then he bounced around, finally got a second chance with the Seahawks, and has been somewhere between pretty good and serviceable ever since. This year, he's been much closer to serviceable, though, so here he is. What can you do? I mean, Seattle's had some injuries. They're adjusting to a new coach, so it makes sense there's been a regression, but the ceiling is what it is for a 34-year-old quarterback, no matter what the circumstances are. Similar story for Derek Carr. He almost made the Fool's Gold tier. If you look at his stats, you might think this guy is good, but watch the games. He'll look really good some games. Other games, he looks like he's throwing with his offhand. That's just been pretty much his whole career. When he got hurt, they tried Spencer Rattler and Jake Haener. Neither one of those guys really worked out. Derek came back. They looked around. They said, hey, somebody has to start. So here he is. And word is he's a pretty good locker room guy too. So you could do a lot worse. You could do worse probably should have been the name of this tier, but we're too far into it. Derek came over from the Raiders a couple of years ago, and their current quarterback, Gardner Minshew, makes this list. Of the three, he's the worst, but he's the best on the Raiders. And you know what? Somebody has to start. There have been a couple of times in his career where he made us think he was okay, but that probably had more to do with people wanting to pull for a guy who looked like a 1970s distance runner. In reality, he's most likely a solid backup. Which brings us to our next tier. The failure to plan is planning to fail tier. These are guys who are starting now for whatever reason, but their teams were caught with their pants down and are now wishing they signed a more serious backup. Oh, Cooper Rush. First of all, with Dak's injury history, how could you not have been prepared? Also, Rush has filled in for him before, and it's been mostly not great. You'd think with all the money Jerry saved by not putting up blinds to keep the sun out of his own players' eyes, they'd have money for a decent backup. But here we have Cooper Rush. Now, clearly, I'm not at their practices, so maybe he lights it up there, and I'm sure he knows the offense well at this point. He's been here forever, but let's be for real. Now, he was much improved in his second start this year, but he could not have been any worse in his first one, and they still got blown out in the second one too. Their rivals, the New York Giants, have kind of done the same thing. First of all, hilarious that they went all in on Daniel Jones and let Saquon walk to a division rival only to have to bench and now, at his request, release Jones. Don't get me wrong, Jones never looked particularly good, and he looked really bad coming off his ACL tear last year, but the way they treated him is kind of lame. Plus, they didn't make sure they had a quality backup knowing he was coming off that injury, and again, has never looked very good. Their second-string quarterback is Drew Lock, and they trust him so much that they named the third-string quarterback, Tommy DeVito, the starter instead. Tommy stunk, then looked okay, then stunk again and got benched when he filled in for Jones last year. As far as I can tell, his best skill, if it is a skill, I don't know, is being aggressively Italian. So yeah, backup quarterbacks matter. Moving on to our next to last tier, the 2015 Peyton Manning tier. This is for guys who may have been good at one point, but it's over. Goodbye. Matthew Stafford, you just had a great game last week. I know you think you can still do this. You can, but not nearly as often as you used to, and it's only going to get worse from here. Time is almost up. I'm a little early on this one, but I'd rather be early than late. Look around the tier, make yourself comfortable. Russell Wilson, Mr. Unlimited. You are, in fact, limited. If Mike Tomlin didn't love winning games in the ugliest way possible, you most likely wouldn't be playing. You had a great run, like Stafford, a Super Bowl champion. You married Sierra, great dad, odd person, but that's okay. Time to hang it up. And another Super Bowl champion who just got sent back to the bench, Joe Flacco. How are you even still here? At the beginning of the episode, I talked about Madden 04. That came out Joe's freshman year at Pitt. It's looked over for Joe several times, but this has got to be it. He turns 40 in January. Running him out there feels like some sort of a crime. Speaking of crimes, it's time for the final tier, the franchise destroyer tier. Deshaun Watson would be here, but he did the right thing and blew out his Achilles. So that leaves just one man, Aaron Rodgers. The Jets have not been a serious franchise during my lifetime. This is the butt fumble franchise. This is the franchise that signed Brett Favre when he got mad the Packers wanted to play a young Aaron Rodgers, only to have Favre show up and start sending out unsolicited dick pics to reporters. I say all that to say that this is a franchise that knows shame. In fact, I'd say Jets fans have come to expect it. But our guy Aaron has taken things to a level that even they couldn't have been prepared for. At his peak as a quarterback, Aaron was one of the best, if not the best. However, that's not what he was as a player when he forced to trade to New York. He was a 39-year-old quarterback who was used to being the focal point of the offense, but could no longer carry teams to victories like that. On top of that, off the field, he was a distraction and a half due to an incessant need to be the smartest person in every room and spend most of his time trying to prove it. That's who the Jets traded for. And it turns out all of the alternative medicine and ayahuasca in the world cannot prevent a 39-year-old body from doing 39-year-old body things, and he ruptured his Achilles 4 snaps into his Jets career. Now, he could have sat back and did what Brett Favre didn't do for him and mentored Zach Wilson, the former second overall pick from the year before Aaron got there, who had struggled as a rookie starter since Aaron was no doubt done for the year, but the Jets still had a chance to win thanks to an unreal defense. But no, he wouldn't be Aaron Rodgers if he did that. He allegedly didn't have any kind of relationship with his potential mentee. I guess he was simply too busy trying to convince the world that he, the smartest medical expert ever, was going to come back and play last season. He was going to defy the odds of Achilles tendon rupture and cut the recovery time roughly in half to lead the Jets to the playoffs. Never mind that this isn't how Achilles tendons work. Think of all the other athletes with all the resources in the world at their disposal who have torn their Achilles, and you haven't seen any of them come back in 3 months. It's a silly idea, but no, Aaron was going to do it. He's simply smarter. Except he didn't. He's human like everyone else with a torn Achilles. He just created this distraction to remain the center of attention since he couldn't be it on the field. He's not some medical wizard. Or shit, maybe he is. Davante Adams allegedly had a bad hamstring when he was on the Raiders. Aaron forced the Jets to trade for him like he does every old receiver whose company he enjoys, and Davante was miraculously healed and ready to go for his first game as a Jet. Have these Rodgers-led personnel moves helped the Jets play any better? Of course not. They haven't even helped Aaron himself play better. The thing with him wanting to prove how smart he is all the time is that you can do that in sports when you still have the skill to execute what you think the smart play is. In fact, a lot of talent can make even the dumbest decision look correct. What happens when that talent fades? Well, you have to move to the land of hypotheticals, which is where Aaron lives now. He loves option routes for his receivers. Read the defense and decide where to go. That only works if quarterback and receiver are on the same page. If not, it's incompletion and interception city. But Aaron even loves that. Why? In Aaron's mind, wherever he threw the ball was the right choice. He can't help it if the receiver was wrong. If he had done what Aaron was thinking he should do, the play would have worked. Much easier to keep this bullshit up using option routes versus set routes where we can see, oh, Aaron fucked that up. He doesn't just use this for his own play, though. Any wrong decisions the Jets make, Aaron is able to tell you exactly how he would have made the right one. He is Captain Hindsight. Oh, I thought we'd go for 2 there. I thought we'd do this. I thought we'd do that. Bullshit. This man is holding this franchise hostage and strong arms his way into any and every decision. If he wanted something one way, he just had to go and whine about it and it would be. But he loves these fuck ups because it gives him the opportunity to tell you how much smarter he truly is than everyone else. He's the extremely rare, possibly only Sunday afternoon, Monday morning quarterback. You disagree with him? Well, you just aren't as enlightened as he is. But the truth is, he's a certified ding-dong. May his legacy forever be that he took an embarrassment of a franchise and somehow found a way to make them even more embarrassing. They've been over backwards for him. It's gotten them 3 wins and a fired coach and a fired GM. This is not a smart man just because he goes places like the Jets or the Pat McAfee show to surround himself with people who make him feel that way. It's simply a lie he's told himself over and over and over again until he's believed it enough to do things like entertain running for vice president on a ticket with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., a man who has claimed in the court of law that he has brainworms. Perhaps they're contagious, but I'm no medical expert. I will leave that to Aaron. All right, that will do it for this episode. No episode next week because I'll be busy with Thanksgiving stuff, but I will have another issue of screenshots for you to read. Link to subscribe for that is in the show notes. Hope y'all have a great holiday. I'm thankful for y'all watching and listening, and I will catch you later.